So next we have our panel discussion, and we have an outstanding set of people to hear from. Before I hand over to Nandan to moderate this panel, let me take a couple of minutes to introduce each of our panelists. I'll start with Anisha Padukone, who is the CEO of the Live, Love, Laugh Foundation, a charitable trust founded in 2015. The foundation aims to give hope to every person experiencing stress, anxiety, and depression. At LLL, she oversees program strategy, fundraising, collaborations, and policy outreach. Anisha is a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council for Mental Health. Her own experience as a mental health caregiver has played a vital role in shaping her ongoing commitment to expanding access to mental health resources. Next, I'd like to introduce Shweta Subbiya, co-founder Sisters in Sweat, who in 2018, along with professional footballer Tanvi Hans, co-founded the organization, India's largest community of women for sport and wellness. Sisters in Sweat believes in the transformative power of sport and aims to provide every woman who has the desire to engage in sport the opportunity to do so and ultimately get women to move more. It has a community of over 5,000 members today. Shweta's career started at a Big Five consulting firm before she made the move to pursuing her passion in fitness. After that, I'd like to introduce Dilip Kumar, who is an entrepreneur who has, for the last 12 years, been working in the space of fitness, nutrition, and health, and who is helping build Rain Matter Health with the team at Zerodha. At Rain Matter, he leads investments in startups building for health, fitness, and nutrition, and is today among the fastest amateur runners in India, running sub-3-hour marathons consistently, and in fact, he was among the top 3 fastest Indians in the Boston Marathon in 2022. Last but not least, we have Somil Mazumdar, co-founder, CEO, and managing director of Sports Village, India's leading sports education organization that aims to get 100 million children to play through partnerships with schools for its path-breaking EduSports in School Sports and PE program. Over the last 20 years, Somil has worked on multiple models of getting kids to play in a sustainable and scalable manner before arriving at the school partnership model. He continues to actively participate in sports, mountaineering, and karate, and holds a basic mountaineering degree from the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering, Uttarkashi, and a black belt in karate. And now to moderate this excellent panel, we have my co-founder, Nandan Kamath. Over to you, Nandan.
First of all, thanks everyone for joining us. I think we've got some of the survey results. Thank you for being game enough to enter them. Like in any survey, the results are mixed. We have some very concerning results, but also some very positive results. The concerning result is that one of you has the most activity you find is through house hunting in Bangalore. And they always say physical activity levels are reflections of cities, but this is truly a new, I think, new and different way of reflecting the challenges of Bangalore. In terms of longevity, I think half of you believe you're going to live only to 45 to 50. And there's another large segment which believes over 100. So there's both optimism and cynicism. One person thinks they're going to live till tomorrow. I do hope you extend your life beyond, and perhaps getting a little bit of physical activity is going to matter. We do have one person who's run 100 kilometers in a day for a special event. Guesses who it might be, but that's incredible. So there are some good results too. But I think that just leads us to a wonderful panel we have today, and we're going to just delve into the personal, the professional, the public. First of all, I think just wonderful to have this mixture of folks. And Anisha, if I may just start with you. Your personal relationship with sport has been a long one, family one, but also a very personal one with golf. So could you tell us a little bit about how that began and what you consider your relationship with sport and physical activity? What would the adjectives be, and what's that journey been like for you?
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Nandan, and everyone here for having me and thinking I'm worthy enough to actually speak on this topic. I think my journey with sport started way before I actually played sport. I come from a sporting family. So I think that culture of being sort of physically active started very young without actually realizing it. And then, somewhere down the line, I actually started playing sport. No prizes for guessing that the first sport I played was badminton. I didn't really enjoy playing it competitively, although I still enjoy playing it a little bit in my free time. So that's really where the journey began. I actually joined a school which promoted sports. And I think that was a very critical factor in my own journey. There was 2 hours of compulsory sport every day. And we had to play different sports as well as choose one that we wanted to specialize in. And that's really where I realized that there definitely was some sort of talent with regard to sport. And that's where I started trying different sports and playing different sports. I played cricket for the state at the under 16 level. Of course, in school, I was a school captain of a couple of teams. So there was obviously that affinity, largely because I felt like I was good at it and therefore I enjoyed it. Eventually, I stumbled upon golf. And that's when I realized that this is really what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to be an athlete as early as 8 or 10 years old. And then it was really about zoning in on which sort of sport I wanted to play. And when I did land upon golf is when I realized it. So basically the journey has been, always been active, happened to get into sport, chose a sport, and that's really where my sporting career began. So I played ended up playing professional golf, represented India in tournaments as well at the amateur level, and competed for about 10 to 12 years. And I still sort of continue to be physically active, even though I now run the Live Love Laugh Foundation. So I think to summarize and coming to some of the objectives, I think for me, I wouldn't even say it's a lifestyle, it's just part of who I am. And more importantly, what I have learned from playing sports at different levels is what I actually implement on a day-to-day basis in my personal and professional life.
Wonderful, Anisha. So I think there is a quote, though, that says that golf is a long walk spoilt, but at least you get your 10,000 steps, right? But Dilip, if I may just come to you next. Your journey with sport, with running, with long distance, talk us through that journey in the way that Anisha did as well.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Nandan, Desh, and Mr. Isaac for putting this evening together. So unlike Anisha, I come from a very different spectrum. I was never into sports growing up. In fact, I started getting into running probably in my mid-30s. That's usually a time where people fold up and go back because that's a time for beer and partying. And call it midlife crisis or what, but I was living a very horrible life from my early 20s, late 20s to early 30s because for the most part of my life, I was an entrepreneur, so building startups, and Mr. Isaac would know that, the priority is to build an enterprise, what you're doing, and then health is certainly not a priority for yourself. But there was a eureka moment when, I met with a certain injury and I was advised by the doctor to go through a surgery, and acute ligament tear. It just didn't bode well to me that I should now go through a surgery at very early in my age, and I thought what could be an organic way to get a rehab, and I was advised to do jogging. So first time of my life, when I was 32, 33, I went out, and I remember I came back and told my wife, I saw a human who was on his feet non-stop for 5 minutes. How is it possible, right? I mean, you're panting all the time. How is that possible? So that was my college serendipity award, introduction to sport and running. Till that time, I was mostly spectator, watching cricket, tennis, everything on television. But running kind of came very naturally to me, unlike anything else, because it's beyond the physical part. It was mentally a great tool. Also being an entrepreneur, because it was a very liberating experience. Get out in the morning, all you need is a pair of shoes. 5-7 years back, Bangalore roads were much better, not heavy traffic, so you could just get a few kilometers of run, you can come back and feel very refreshing. So that was my introduction to the sport. Today, can't call it just an additional part, it's just a part of my life. It feels very incomplete if I can't get my 10-15 kilometers a run daily basis. Everything I do today revolves around staying healthy, staying fit. For the longest time of my life, I've only heard that proverb, health is wealth. I can't claim that I created wealth, but being healthy has helped me build a lot of precious relationships, not just with my family, but the people I work with right now. I got connected with you. So I think there's a lot of tangible and intangible benefits what you get by staying healthy, and sport has just been a very natural anchor to be there. And like Manisha was saying that, I mean, for her, she wanted to be an athlete early in her life. For me, I live a life as an identity of being an endurance athlete. I internalize that, I manifest it to my life that I am an athlete, because that just makes me get up in the morning, go back early to say that I have to perform tomorrow, both at work and at sports. So, yeah.
So it's an attitude and approach to life that you've taken, and that sort of keeps you honest to who you want to be in some sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dilip, can you just talk us through Boston Marathon? Very few of us in this room are going to get to that, but give us that experience, give us that feeling, the first few kilometers, the middle of the race, the right at the end. What is it like to be pushing the boundaries, just achieving what you did?
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, Boston Marathon is considered to be an Olympic equivalent to amateurs in running. It's one of the most prestigious marathon events in the world, and you can't get through that. You have to qualify, and you qualify by running a certain time qualification, and it's age graded. So, someone at 30 to 35 has to qualify within a certain timeline. And it's super hard to get through. It's because the timings are pretty fast. So, I was lucky to put in some hard work, and I got through, but pandemic postponed it, so I could get another timing, and I went back year 2022. It was amazing. It's a gala. If not, someone could get a opportunity to participate, but someone should probably, if they're in the Boston area around April, they should definitely spend some time. The entire city is out for every meter from the start line to the finish line, the 42 kilometers. It was the roads were filled with people, and the most beautiful part was that they were cheering regardless of what nationality you are, right? And I had runners around me. There were some 30,000 people, and they were runners from almost 150 countries. So I'm pretty much running with an Italian, Spanish, American, German, call it what, men, women of all different age groups. And when you reach there and when you see this vibrant ecosystem, it just gives you this amazing high, which is very hard to, kind of put through it, because those endorphins are invaluable. And then you come back and you tell these stories, it just, somewhere it goes back to your bucket list to say that it's tick. You couldn't get to Olympics, but that's the closest you could get through. So, I mean, that was a great experience. And the closest we can get in India is the Mumbai Marathon, if someone has gotten a chance to, but definitely an event to get through. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Dilip. Shweta, coming to you, Sisters in Sweat, you went from IT professional to someone in the middle of the fitness, I'd say, revolution in this country. Talk us a little bit about how you have built your relationship. Was it one that was from a young age, something you actively moved into? What were the sort of the transformative points for you?
Yeah, for me, I think sport was very much rooted in my childhood. I'm also from Coorg, and if you know anything about the community, a little bit overactive perhaps. So my mum used to play basketball for the state of Karnataka, and she was a very active influence in my life. So growing up, I think one way of sort of getting rid of my brother and me was to just put us in different camps. So we went to cricket camp one year, hockey camp one year, and I enjoyed it so much. And through school, I played sport very actively. I played hockey for the state of Karnataka under 16. But then, of course, the 10th grade board exams came along, and like every good little Indian, I set aside sport and decided to focus on my academics, because I realized at the time there was probably no future for me in sport as well, and it was a nice thing to do recreationally. So fast forward to finishing up my 12th in Bangalore, I went off to Canada to pursue an undergraduate degree in economics. I couldn't engage in sport as much because of the weather. It was snowing most of the year. That's when I got introduced to the university gymnasium, which I found to be a terribly boring space, because sport is reactive, it's a lot of fun, and then you're stuck with these weights and you're just doing reps. But at the end of the day, it was my way of releasing that extra energy that I had anyways. I came back to India and I started working with Ernst & Young. And I think at the end of those 2 years, I was sure that this was not where I wanted to be, and I wanted to go back to sport somehow, but had no clue what that path could be or how I could get there. I then had the good fortune of meeting Shriram Ramdas, who's in the crowd here, who is setting up Zella Health Club. And for those of you who have been in Bangalore many years will know Zella was a really premium, beautiful health club space. So I joined Sriram's team to set up Zella and sort of learned everything about the gym business at that point. And at the end of 2 years of actually setting it up, I decided to become a personal trainer myself. So I went off to the UK to get certified and came back and started my personal career journey from there on. This was sort of an inflection point in, I think, fitness as a whole in the country, because up until that point, being a fitness instructor meant that you had big biceps and you looked a certain way. I certainly did not fit that bill. So when I came back, and I remember my first day on the floor, there were 35 male instructors all looking a certain way, and then there was me, a dumbbell, really. But I stood my ground, because at that point, we were moving globally towards more functional training for just moving better, being physically fit, and not necessarily to look a certain way. I got a big break early in my career when Nike came down and they were looking to onboard trainers to represent the brand. I got selected at that point, and things sort of took off for me from a personal training perspective. Nike was also instrumental in me meeting Tanvi Hans, who's my partner, and she's here as well. Tanvi is a professional footballer. She's one of the first Indian origin footballers to play football in the Premier League. She played for the Hotspurs, for those who are football enthusiasts. So when she came back to India and decided to move to Bangalore, that's when we sort of started hanging out a little bit. And I was keen to introduce her to my friends. So when I was going around introducing her, one of my friends was keen to learn football. We assumed that this was a one-off, okay, I'll learn football, I'll do it one weekend and that'll be it. So Tanvi and me said, okay, we'll organize a football session, but we need a few girls, it's a team sport. And so we invited a few of our friends to come learn football one morning. It was a Sunday morning. I thought at least, maybe 4 or 5 girls will show up, because football is not a sport that is played in Bangalore amongst women for sure. There was never a football team at school, and I was in every team, I think, that I could get my feet in. But 15 of our friends showed up, and that was an amazing moment. We had a great time. Jayanti is here as well. She was one of the first people who were part of that session. And then as time went on, we realized that this community was growing very organically, because we created a WhatsApp group and girls would invite their friends to just come and play. And I think we had one moment when Tanvi and me realized we reached the capacity of the WhatsApp group, which was at the time 256. We were like, 256 girls want to play football? That's amazing. And what also happened over time is Bangalore's small in a sense, that initially we knew all the girls that were coming in, but then there came a point I had no clue who the girl was who was coming in to play football with us. So that's kind of how we started. We've grown organically, literally friends inviting friends. Today we stand at close to 6,000 women strong. We're in 2 cities and we do multiple sports. And the goal really is to get every girl who has the desire to play sport the opportunity to do so. We do service, I think, a privileged part of society right now for many reasons. But I think the end goal is to get to the underprivileged girls, where the impact is going to be far more, it'll just be far more impactful than what we're doing right now.
Wonderful. Somit, industry veteran, I can call you. Been at this for so many years and really torchbearer for the concept of play in sport and education. Talk us, even before getting into the sports village journey, your own interest in sport. Where did that come from? Your interest in trekking, the community that you grew up in. What motivated your interest in the subject in the first place?
Sure. First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. So I grew up in my father was a scientific officer in BARC in Bombay, Bhabha Atomic Research Center. That was a very nice complex, had multiple playing areas. So I grew up playing. And it was just something that you did. There was nothing to think about. And I used to play badminton a bit. I got selected for the Maharashtra team in my 8th, 9th standard. At that time, Prakash sir was obviously the hero there. And I had a choice to make at some point saying, are you serious? One, I knew I was probably not good enough, but also there was a choice to make saying, do you want to pursue it? And I remember my dad, I'm a Guju, my dad telling me that, hey, if you want to play, at least play tennis or golf. Kuch paisa to banega. At that time, at least badminton didn't have much money. But he did, to be fair, gracefully said, we'll find people to support you. But like a good middle class kid, I went down the academic side, but kept playing. So I was part of the, interestingly, in IIT Bombay, I couldn't get into the badminton team. So it just reminded me that sports and education are not too orthogonal, right? I mean, I thought I was a cool dude. I played for Maharashtra, selected for Maharashtra, got into IIT, and I couldn't get into the team. So I got into the football team finally, and so I kept playing football, then IMB football. So for sports has been part of my life. And this journey of Sportsville is very, very serendipitous. I was a tech entrepreneur. We had a tech support startup in 99, 2000, and then I went to the Bay Area, came back. I was looking at ideas to get around stuff and playing in tech. And we were just throwing some ideas around as people do, and nothing was kind of working out. And as I was leaving the place with Jay, my friend, he said, "Mera beta khelta nahi hai. My son doesn't play." His boy was then 6 years old, Siddharth. I didn't have a kid that time. I said, "Okay, why don't he play?" He said, "There's no space." So that's when I realized as an adult, you get access to space, but as a child, access to space is a problem. So I said, "Okay, so what should we do?" So he said, "All these vacant plots lying around in Bangalore, 30, 40 plots, which are right now garbage dumps, why don't you just take them up on rent, clean them up, put a grass on it, and charge 100, 200 bucks. Parents will come with their kids, they'll play." And that's how Sportsville started. It was completely serendipitous. That boy Siddharth now is cleared IIT Kanpur and is now in the US. So it's been 20 years now that we've started because of that boy. But the idea of Sportsville was we're supposed to be a noun. And anyway, I'll fast forward later on, but that's how we started. The treks and everything else was just part of what I like to do. And I think what has kept me going for the last 20 odd years has been two things. One is this big belief in the power of sport, while I landed up here serendipitously because of that conversation. And I thought maybe I could combine entrepreneurship and sports. It seemed like an easier business to do with that idea. Like most ideas, Excel sheets made me billionaires very quickly, but Excel sheets didn't run the real world. And then we thought we'll be a ground, we'll have a place in every zip code of the country. That didn't work out, and slowly we kind of tried multiple business models, which all failed. And finally, in 2009, after 6 years of trying different models, we kind of, again, serendipitously knocked down school doors, and the whole Edu Sports program started, and now we are like 5 lakh kids that we handle today across 1,000 odd schools.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about that in the context of our conversation, Somil. We're talking about physical activity and, in some sense, building the desire, capability, and propensity to remain active through a life. How important is the school and formative years? We've had these conversations so often now. You look at literacy and numeracy, but also inserting this concept of physical literacy is the understanding of your body, the desire to move. And I think we've had so many conversations, and one of the things you've talked about is the magic of play, right? So when play happens, we don't know why it happens, but magic happens. Talk us a little bit through that and where you see physical education and physical literacy in schools fitting into this larger conversation of building, in some sense, a healthy but also cohesive nation.
So let me start with the conclusion, my conclusion, which is there is no option but to engage with schools. Because that's where the kids are, that's where the safe spaces are, that's where the time is, that's where the budgets are, everything is there. If you want to build a sustainable and scalable way to get kids to play, my view, after trying, I think, 15 business models in getting kids to play, is it has to integrate in education. There's just no other way to do it, is my view. But let me start from the beginning. 2008-9, when we knocked on school doors, and I used to go and knock on school doors, still do. Out of 100 schools we knocked on, 90 threw us out, saying sports is not important, we're doing maths and science. Some of them said, leave your sample behind. They thought we're selling a bat or a ball or something, right? I mean, the sample, yes, this is a sample. 10 of them said, interesting, tell me more. 3 of them said, where have you been all this while? Because I'm a principal who's a maths teacher or English teacher, and my PE is somebody's paid for the country or state. I ask one question saying, what are you doing? And he gives me an answer saying, I'm teaching dribbling skills. And I don't know what to ask next. Because I'm a maths teacher. I just don't know what to ask. I know what's happening is broken, but I don't know what to ask. And that's how we kind of started. And what we found was that, there's a model in education that has worked. Let me call it academics, right? Which is, scalable, structured, inclusive, fun, which is working. We just copied education. To your point, in 2009, I used to have to wave my hands and convince people why sports. Today, it is not about why, it's about how sports in schools. I think that has changed a lot. from why sports to how sports. Now it's about, okay, what's your curriculum? Does it engage with my philosophy? How do you assess kids? So a lot of the stuff which was kind of just not there has kind of come in now over a period of time. And it's taken some work. To your point, the magic of play, we've seen impact. But I think it's important to understand why are kids not playing, Nandan? Kids are not playing, like we do annual health surveys, now 11th edition, we did for 2.5 lakh kids, 364 schools. 1 in 3 doesn't have the right fitness, upper body strength. 2 in 3 don't have the right flexibility. 1 in 2 don't have the right lower body strength. So if they don't have the fitness to play, how will they play? So when we ask this question, we have to first ask, why are the kids not playing? Because we're not giving them the right fitness, the right skills to play. And that has to happen in the school. There's no other context in which you can get 35, 40 kids together. Right? So, and then we found that when we get them to play, to a magic of play, one is, of course, we found fitness improvement and all this stuff. We found attendance improvement between 20 to 46% in schools. Just attendance improvement. We found 15 to 20% improvement in social emotional learning, like handling obstacles, problem solving, and so on. We found girls playing. We had a school in Trichy where there were 5 girls playing football for reasons that all of us think about. It's too sunny, it's going to get dark, parents don't want you to play. From there, we got to 565 girls playing football. All because we were able to transform this notion of, sport has this problem of being seen as competitive and coaching. What you need is teaching. I think that's a very fundamental construct that we need to undo. Sport assumes, and that's why play is a better word. Play has a non-competitive, soft angle to it. Sport has very quickly it becomes competitive. Did you play for the country? Your glory is the medals around. Your glory is not the participation or not the joy of play, right? So I think this teaching as a notion was something that we found as one very important piece. So, and teaching assumes the the student is not motivated. Coaching assumes you are motivated. Your coach tells you run 5 rounds of Chinnaswamy, you'll run. Right? For most of the kids who come, if I tell them the next day, they'll not show up. Right? So how do you engage kids who are not wanting to play? That's a very different teaching. And that's one thing we learned. The other thing which I think is the most important piece is that kids want to play because they want to have fun. A lot of adults getting involved are taking the fun away out of this whole thing. And the fun part is what keeps them going. So when you combine fun with a good teacher, we are able to see those impacts. So, sorry, long answer to your question.
No, it's a brilliant answer. Also, I mean, so much has changed in urban settings around your 20 years, right? And I think what we're also finding is just so much dependence also on parents to access play. So in many ways, if the school is not the site of play, I think the democratic sort of element of everyone getting a chance really gets taken away, because you need a parent to drive you to some academy, move to some other place. That notion of just pick up play and pick up sport is much more difficult to access. And there I'd just like to move to Sweta, just coming back to you in terms of, in terms of the children who have started play, you have like in your case, you've played, you enjoy playing, you have a desire to play, but then something suddenly happens, right? So it could be a disruption, you're moving to a new city, going to a new job, and that perhaps tracks a lot of journeys of women, becoming mothers, in some sense a change of status or a disruption. What in your experience, is it a sudden thing that happens? Do you lose sort of desire and capability in a sort of a disrupted way? One day you move from active to inactive, or is it a gradual process that happens? What are the factors and what are the ways in which Sisters in Sweat has brought people back from inactive to active? What are the triggers that work?
Yeah, I think in my experience from talking to people or talking to women in our community, and from my personal experience as well, it seems pretty sudden. There is an event that happens in your life, whether it be going away to college in my case, getting married, becoming a wife, and then having those responsibilities, becoming a mother or work, seems to be for the most part pretty sudden, where you're active. For the most part, I think the women that are part of Sisters in Sweat, if they've played sport, it's only been in school and college, and then it's gone. I think what we've managed to, and there's several barriers for women in particular to come back to sport later on in their lives. One of them being the fact that they just find it intimidating. If they've not played in a long time or if they've never played, sport is intimidating. So what we've managed to do, I think, at Sisters in Sweat is demystify it a little bit, make it a little bit more fun, make it more inclusive, and also the fact that it's a community. So tomorrow, if my friend says, hey, come, I'm playing with these bunch of girls, it's a fun time, you're more likely to try it as opposed to, okay, there's an academy there to go play sport and maybe, perform. With Sisters in Sweat, it's a known fact that we don't play for performance, we play for fun. So I think that has really, really helped in growing this community.
Yeah, and I think school report card, you want the A's, right? But here it's almost the F's that get you there. So it's fun, friends, some form of feedback. In the worst case, it might be fear as well, that you've had some health incident. But Dilip, coming back to you in terms of how you've translated your interest in fitness and health into your professional sphere, and what's that like, and where's your focus?
I love how Saumil started. I just want to build up from where he said. I think going back to the question what you asked about how we can build an ecosystem. Also, we still have a culture in our country where sport is considered to be an extracurricular activity. So, the term itself has extra. So it's not your primary. Kids, at least back in the days, the incentive was that if you can finish your homework, you can go out and play a 30-minute cricket or football, whatever it is, right? So, but now things are changing. So I think school is one where it has to start. Also, a lot has to start at home, right? So if you're a parent, if you are active, the kid would be active because they're growing up seeing you as an active parent. But if the parent is not active, I think it's kind of a barbarian expectation to have your kid to be the most fittest and the most sporty. It's never going to happen, right? So if the kid wakes up and see that mom and dad are working out or getting to the gym or run, whatever that is, they kind of internalize and manifest that thought that, okay, that's how the culture is, being a healthy lifestyle, and they'll grow up into it. So I think that also has to change a lot from a culture point of view, that how we ingrain the system at home, and then it kind of moves to the education and then at least workplace. For me, like I said, it was serendipity. I never aspired to be an athlete. By the way, I'm not a professional athlete, but I love the identity of being an athlete. It brings a lot of structure to life. Everything is fairly systemized. There is a meaning to what I eat. There is a meaning to how much I move, and it eventually stitches together to a certain goal. And therefore, that structure gives a lot of meaning to life itself, and that's how I identify sports as part of my life. The parallel to fitness to professional was again, like Saumil, I realized that that's a problem statement I could solve, and that gave an idea for me to build my startup before what I work at Brain Matter Health. And we built the idea was simple that, fitness centers are not important, fitness is important. So how can you build or bring fitness experiences back at home? And I thought that's a problem which I faced because there was a lot of overhead for me to go to a gym, commute, figure out a parking spot. So I built a product around that, which is before pandemic. We had no clue pandemic was going to come. So we built a product around that where the fitness services can come online. That led me to meet interesting people, interesting investors who realized that there is a merit in this idea, and we could support that. That's how I met Nitin, founder of Zerodha, and the team around that. So today, whatever I do is everything around health, and I think I'm very lucky. A lot of gratitude to be in that spot because I'm very passionate about that, which has allowed me to work with people who also have a heart in that space. And part of the work, what I do is to cheer and support entrepreneurs who are building these products and solutions for others to stay healthy. So it eventually connects the dots to me that I am a consumer myself. I understand what it takes to eat right, sleep well, mental health, what can be the problem statement which I am facing, which can be solved. And can someone build a solution around that, and what do they need to build it out further, whether that's financial capital or ecosystem, whatever. So for me, it has done a great deed in connecting those dots.
Wonderful. Anisha, may just come to you. The Live, Love, Laugh Foundation, its mission, its work around mental health, how it fits into the larger public health debate, and where do you think physical activity, exercise, fitness plug into this, relate to this, and the broader issue of the challenges people are facing with mental health in the modern day?
No, absolutely. I think any mental health expert that you ask, and that's also now filtered down to common knowledge, that there is an extremely important linkage between physical health and mental health. And if you are going to focus on health in general, that covers both, right? So I think from in terms of what it actually does, there's of course the scientific part of it, which is we've all heard about endorphins being released when you exercise. So you go and you exercise, you feel great, and you come back feeling really good. That's also because your happy hormones, as they're called, are released. You also have dopamine and serotonin. So there's of course the biological part of it. But from my own sort of personal experience, I think what exercising in any way or form, and that could mean, whatever way or form works for you. I may enjoy going to the gym, somebody else may like to play a sport. So whatever you enjoy doing, for me personally, what it has done is, and irrespective of what I've done, it's always remained the same. The results have always been, firstly, that I sleep better. I'm so tired by the end of the day that when I sort of, get into bed, there's no tossing, turning. I'm not sort of trying to fall asleep. I fall asleep automatically. It's also the quality of the sleep that you get. The second part of it is I eat better. I know what it takes and the amount of hard work required to burn those calories, and I'm sure everyone else over here knows that as well. So I'm a little bit more conscious about what I consume, how I consume it, when I consume, from a dietary perspective. I think the third aspect is all of this allows me to feel better. My moods, the way I react to things, my interactions with people. And then the fourth thing, which actually I think is most important, is I think a lot better. When these three things are in place, I feel like I have a lot more energy. I feel like I can concentrate and focus more. Long hours at work or otherwise don't affect me as much as when I don't exercise. There was actually a point in time during COVID when I decided to, I felt lazy, for probably the first time in my life. I said, let me just see what that actually feels like. The impact of that on my mental health for those 4 to 6 months was far greater than it was, at least for me, on my physical health. So a lot of the reason why I work out today is for my mental health. So there are days when it's extremely tired, when I'm very tired and I'm lazy. I don't want to sort of push myself. And then of course there are days when I don't go. But there are times when I actually step into that zone of wanting to work out or exercise because I know that if I don't, it will have a very great impact or large impact on my mental health.
And are these discussions happening in the sort of mental health policy space, in the work that you do? Are counselors actually speaking to people through their sort of physical health journeys? Where does physical activity fall within sort of the current realm of both inputs and outputs? So in some sense preventive of mental health conditions, and also in some sense resolving to whatever extent possible, curative.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it falls bang in the middle of both of those spectrums. So from a preventive, everything that I just spoke about falls under the preventive, right? I do know that a lot of mental health professionals today recommend lifestyle changes. And those lifestyle changes includes physical activity. Even if it's 20 minutes a day, going for a walk. I know that that's largely prescribed. Of course, I'm not a mental health professional myself, but that is being sort of recognized. I think the difference between mental health in the West is it's a lot more clinical and therefore sort of a lot easier for diagnosis to be given, for medication to be given, whereas the effects of of the East is that we have the advantages of yoga, meditation, right? So how can we look at mental health from a preventive as well as curative perspective? Sort of broaden that conversation to not just medication in case it's required, but also lifestyle changes. Like I said, better sleep, better food intake, exercising, of course, yoga, meditation. These are things that not just expert, even mental health organizations like ours are trying to promote and propagate.
And I think there was a very interesting journal article a few months ago in the British Sports Medical Journal, which said that actually physical activity has 1.5x more chance of resolving mental health issues than medication. So, I mean, that's a pretty large statement. Interesting to see how that evolution is happening. And taking that forward, Somil, I actually heard a very interesting story the other day of an author who one day decided that he was going to write a book while on a treadmill. So he wrote an entirely different book, from completely different in style, completely different in sentence length. So all of it was written while he was walking. Now, when we move this debate forward, right, to a much more public sphere, the debate around why kids need to play sport, why they need to play at all in schools, is it time to actually switch the debates and sort of, in some sense, new narrative, cognitive development, and your kid who plays more is going to do better at school, is going to do better at academics, is going to get into IIT perhaps. Is there a need to do that, or is that an overdone, in some sense, overstatement?
So that's an interesting way of framing that question. Just want to add to the mental health piece. I was in the US for a Project Play Summit, and one of the biggest things that came out was there's a mental health crisis happening in the US, and they're all talking about how they don't have enough professionals to handle that crisis. And they're all saying the only way to solve it is through sport. So please fix your sport program, because we can't handle the mental health crisis problem. It's very interesting that they say we cannot handle it by professionals, mental health professionals. We need sports programs to fix it. So I think that's maybe, and what's happened in the US probably going to happen very soon here. So yeah. Coming back to your question, Nandan, I think the real problem that I found, and I've approached this problem as an entrepreneur, as a juicy problem to solve, which is worth solving, and hopefully someday I'll solve it, right? I think the problem is not of policy. For the last now 20 years, the PE is mandatory from the time schools got created, right? 1 period is mandatory, 2 periods are mandatory. Schools are supposed to have 2 acres, 3 acres of it. It's mandatory. So policy is not a problem. Implementation is the problem. So I just want to distinguish, and I know you and I have had this conversation about where should, in my view, your I think the NEP, bunch of stuff has happened in the past. In 2014, we were in the Satyamev Jayate Amir Khan show where a ball can change the world. And I remember people calling me saying, oh guys, you are on it, your business will rock and all. Nothing changed for me. Not a single call from a school that says, hey, we saw you, we want to introduce the program. So my point is, it's not like people don't know. People know. But they're still not doing it. So it's an implementation issue, not a policy issue, it's not a... And therefore, to your point, and now let me talk about that. We also tried this thing that we'll go to schools and say, hey, because of sport, maths improves, because of sport, at least as a vendor, if you will, right? And I remember a principal putting his arm around me and says, Somil, today the maths teacher thinks of you as his friend. Tomorrow you will come and say, maths scores went up because of sports, the maths teacher is not going to like you. Right, so there are existing forces in play, right? So coming back to your point, I have not met any parent till now in the 20 years who said kids should not play. So this point about cognitive and all that makes sense if somebody is not convinced. Problem is not that people are not convinced. They are convinced, but still not happening. Right now, I'll give you some data points. 86 minutes versus 420 minutes, which is your WHO data per week, minutes per week, right? 28.6% of PE classes get substituted every year in schools. Because of math, science, because of substitution, whatever. So 30% of classes are gone. So that's telling you where it is right now. So why aren't parents doing a dharma? Why aren't parents... So I think it comes back to maybe partly what he said, that who's holding the accountability on implementation? If the parent of the school shows up and says, I want that program, I want that assessment, I want to know what's happening for sports for my child, the school will be forced to respond. So in my mind, the question is not policy, question is not bunch of other metric questions is just holding somebody accountable. Let's stop sending kids to school where don't have sports programs, they don't have space. You will see this market responding. Let's stop buying flats where don't have play spaces. You will see the market responding. As adults, we are doing all this and then saying kids are not playing. Of course they will not play because nobody's holding them accountable. And this is a group of converted. The people who are not converted are outside. But the larger question is, if they don't ask that question, and all we can do is give them the tools to ask the question. What we were able to do in our own small way was to tell a parent, hey, you know what? Ask the school that question, what's happening for my child? Not what's happening for the talented kids, the top 1%. Right? And just that one question held some schools accountable. So I think it's more a personal accountability question. In my mind, it's not a policy question.
That's a wonderful perspective. Shweta, just coming to you, do you have difficulty convincing people to come out and play, or is it barriers at home? What is keeping women, girls from playing more actively? Is it aspects of social mores? Is it safety? What are the issues that young women are facing in urban settings today?
It's definitely those two points that you brought up. It's social mores for sure, which is why I think Sisters in Sweat has done so well, because I've had girls come to me saying that thank God we can participate in sport because it's all girls and there's no objection from home. What was the other one? Sorry.
Safety.
Of course. Safety is a huge one. I mean, I remember sports days back in school where it felt unsafe. I mean, it was co-ed sports day, and it just felt like an unsafe environment. And I think it's Sisters in Sweat, given that it's all girls and we're a pretty rowdy bunch in a way and intimidating to the outside, it feels safe. Those two are definitely, in my mind, huge factors that have excluded women from participating to a large extent. And also this just general notion that sport is not for women. I think what we are trying to do, and we've managed to do it to some extent, we're starting to see it happen, is when children see their mothers play, when daughters see their mothers play, when nieces see their aunts play, they start to understand that this is something they can do as well. Because up until then, I think there definitely is the narrative that sport is for men, Barbie dolls are for girls. And I think we're starting to break that down slowly.
Yeah, and just connecting actually a study done by your former employer, Ernst & Young in the US, it found that 90% of CXO women had actually played sport at some point. So I think just even if you were looking to develop in urban settings, leadership development, it's an incredible statistic. And coming to that, to you, Dilip, in terms of workplaces, I think young people, obviously the sites are schools. Adults, so much time spent at work. Is there some, and I mean, all the rest of the time is spent commuting or house hunting, as we saw. How do do workplaces take responsibility for the physical activity journey of their teams?
Yeah, so I don't know what others are doing. I read reports which says that the corporate wellness market is certain $1 billion and all of that, and there are tons of people who are trying to build and sell to corporates. But I always wonder more first principles that like just in school we have sports days. Why can't we have sports days in corporates? Right? We have a Diwali day. We whatever have an annual day. We could as well have a sports day, right? People like. Both of them were saying that the culture starts at home. So if a parent needs to go to a sports day of the kids, it should be just in their holiday list that no questions asked. You can go. There are a lot of basics what people can do. For example, at Zerodha, if you come, a small thing at every step you climb, there is a ticker which says that you're burning this much of calories. Of course, you can take an elevator, but it's just these small pieces which tells you that, okay, you're moving the needle to some direction where you could stay healthy. You could eat right. So instead of having just random, a cafeteria which, some basic food, you could have something which is more healthy. So you could have a healthier alternative to someone to consume food. So there's a lot which can be done. I'm sure there is a lot which is being done, but there's a great more work which can be done, because let's understand almost 90% of your waking hours are spent at your workplace. That's where most of your active time is. So if you're not moving and you are sedentary and you're in front of your devices all the time, that's eating out of your life in some way, right? Because when you're back home, the endurance of Bangalore traffic, you can't expect a lot someone to go back home, commute for an hour and then hit the gym. It's very unreasonable, right? So there's a lot which can be done in mimicking and simulating that active lifestyle at workplace, but it's again starts first principles that build up a gym, have those weekend football activities or something where people consider that as part of their work instead of something which they have to do an extra mile and make an effort to do that.
No, so active schools, active workplaces, and also active cities, right? So I think anyone who travels a little bit, you go abroad, like you're just so active, 15,000 steps without even trying. Here in Bangalore, just getting to 6,000, 7,000 needs like some serious effort. But Anisha, just to end, before we open up to the audience for some comments and thoughts, the role of sport and sports ambassadors in the mental health conversation. So I think these are people at their peak prowess, right? Physically active, excellent at what they do. What has it meant for the greatest athletes in the world to actually come to the mental health discussion, and what has it meant for the mental health community?
It's an interesting question. I think, there's two ways to look at it, right? When you look at athletes, they are, I'm the biggest fan of some of these athletes. They're sort of superhuman. They're not allowed to show weaknesses. And in some sense, having mental illness or having experienced it equates to being weak, which is contrary to your profession. But if you actually break it down, obviously they're all human beings first, right? And I think Mr. Isaacs was talking about the number of gold medals that India has won, right? Michael Phelps is a great example. He's won more gold medals than India has won ever. For someone like Michael Phelps, who is probably the greatest Olympian ever, to actually experience mental illness after all of his success, I think reiterates for everybody that mental illness does not discriminate and can affect anybody at any point of time. The common theme that runs across all of the athletes who've spoken about it, whether it's Michael Phelps, or a lot of the cricketers, Ben Stokes, Glenn Maxwell, you have other swimmers as well. Abhinav Bindra, our foundation, Live, Love, Laugh Foundation, actually featured Abhinav in something called, it's a property of ours called the Lecture Series, where he spoke about how he experienced mental illness after he won his gold medal. So he worked his whole life to be able to reach one goal, and when he achieved that, he didn't have any purpose anymore, and that sort of led him to what he experienced. So I think the common theme that runs across all of this is, like I said, that at the end of the day, we're all human. If we are able to accept it for ourselves, if we are able to sort of authentically share that with others, it creates a sort of a safe space for everyone to be able to accept it, because unfortunately stigma is extremely high. So I think the importance of athletes, any kind of celebrity, of Deepika, of course, Lady Gaga, Selena Gomez, hopefully, with Live, Love, Laugh, some individuals from the business community as well, if they can sort of talk about it. What it actually does is gives a platform for a topic like mental health, which allows for greater awareness and reach. But at the end of the day, when you break it down, we're all just human beings and we're all susceptible. So therefore, working in the preventive space and ensuring for each one of us as individuals, whoever we may be, to be able to take care of our own mental health, the way that we take care of our physical health becomes all the more important. I think there's been a sort of a revolution in physical health, which is also why sort of we're sitting here and having this conversation in the last 10 or 15 years in India. It's definitely gotten a lot better. And with the foundation, one of the things that we're trying to do is can we make mental health more aspirational? Curative, of course, because it's an issue that affects more than 200 million Indians. But can we also make it preventive, and can we start taking care of our mental health as well as we take care of our physical health?
Wonderful. Thank you, Anisha. Somil, you have a last thought?
Just in the spirit of the discussion, there's this point about kids will play when parents are playing and so on. I just have a view which probably is not contrarian, which is that most of adults, most of us have had a very poor experience in physical education and sports in schools growing up. So most of the people here are very good in sports, but most of the people outside are not, and they are not there because they've got a very bad experience thing of play and sports. So they don't look at play as a positive place. So they are not going to go there. So by moving the onus onto the parent, when the child should play, we're actually fighting a wrong battle. If my child has to learn maths, doesn't mean I have to learn maths. He has to learn math. I finished my math long ago. Right? I shouldn't be doing math today because he has to learn math, right? So I think it's very important to frame this battle properly. You can't fight too many battles. We have a reality of an adult population who doesn't like to play. Changing that is going to take a much bigger battle. Do you want to fight that battle, or do you want to fight the kids' battle? Fighting both at the same time is just too risky. And in fact, more importantly, you're shifting the problem to the parent. Why is your child not playing? Because you're not playing. But the child has to play.
Yeah, but I think, Somil, the way we look at it is two very different conversations. So one is building the propensity in the child to live an active life. But what we're aiming for is an active life for everyone, right? So I think that, yes, the challenges and barriers are much more to convert someone from inactive to active. But I don't think it's a battle we should give up on. I think there are many frameworks in terms of getting people to change. And I think Shweta's work is very actively on that. So I think just in some sense saying that only the children are worth spending time on and solving that problem also in some sense invalidates the sort of the lived experiences of so many who are capable of being moved from inactive to active in some sense, right? So
in the context of getting kids to play.
Yeah, so I think they're perhaps two different conversations, but in some sense, are children watching the way we live our lives? Absolutely. And the desire and propensity to keep on playing or keep on remaining active is perhaps also, looking up to parents, the language they use, the behavioral aspects of the parents' own journey. So perhaps there are multiple battles to be fought at the same time, but also knowing what you're trying to achieve with each of those battles. So I think wonderful debate. Thank you all for joining it. Just like to open up to the audience if there are any thoughts, comments, questions for any of our panelists. Anyone, just put up your hand, and if you can have a mic passed on. Please just do introduce yourself. Feel free to add to the discussion or ask a question if you would prefer.
Hi, my name is Muttana, and I'm glad I came here instead of the Trevor Noah show. Actually, my question is, I don't know it's one or a series of questions. I'm picking up from what Mr. Isaac said. Currently, 37% of our population is urban. Your Mission 100 thing is you want everybody active by 2047. You also said the best place is schools, right? I'm just going by what I heard. And one of the challenges of schools is their space, is their infrastructure. The thought that's coming to me, which I'm asking you, is the rural environment a better place to have better impact up front? For all the factors that because more people, more playing grounds, no distractions, no traffic problems, you work with government, which is the largest stakeholder in this. The thought is that rural area a place for better impact, easier converts, like you said? That's my question to any of you.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting debate, and in fact, what the early research suggests is that the issues are in fact flipped. So there's no lack of open space, there's no lack of desire and time, but what you do have is the facilitators, the capacity, the instigators, the Shwetas for an urban setting. There are also deeply socially ingrained behaviors and practices. In rural areas, for example, the statistics are very stark of the number of women who do not leave their home in a day, or at most leave their home once, right? And very often that's to get water and come back. So I think the battles are different, the sites are very different, and the ways in which you would tackle them, they may seem simpler, but they're complex in many other different ways. So you'd have to have, I think, different lines of attack. I don't know, Shweta, you want to add something to that in your experience?
Yeah, no, I was just sort of exactly what you said. Yeah, I think the rural areas address the infrastructure issue that we face in urban India. But the social and the layers of social barriers that we face in rural areas are probably far, far more. And I think that's a really hard one to tackle. So yeah, I don't think it's a straightforward answer to attack the rural areas and then come to urban.
But some of the solutions might be similar. So I think what people, and I was talking to Shweta earlier, is that women, how do you get women out of the home and feeling safe to do activities? There have been a number of non-profits like Yuva and others, Nandi Foundation, who are actually bringing people out in communities. So getting young girls to play in female-only tournaments, getting women to almost like the self-help group type of setups where you can do exercise and activity in sort of female-only environments. So there are ways and there are learnings from the urban to the rural, and there'll probably be learnings both ways. But I don't think either of them is an easy task, but both of them are areas which need attention and need active, I would say, curation of sorts.
And pose their own set of problems and solutions, I suppose.
Yes, but I think the principles remain very similar, right? So long as people are having fun and finding friends and community, and in some sense getting any form of feedback. It could be fitness, it could be a sense of belonging, it could be a sense of fulfillment. I think those principles remain the same, but I don't think they're easier battles anywhere, personally. But I mean, that's just a perspective. Anyone else want to add? Tanya, so could you have the mic?
Hi, I'm Tanya. I work in public health. So I guess from a public health perspective, I wanted to ask, so we want to have active societies, active environments. We want to have people who understand the importance of physical activity and sports from a young age, so that when they're older in life, they recognize this is something that's going to keep me healthy, keep me happy. And then we want to have active environments. So that's precisely what you're doing, Shweta, where you're creating a space where people from different backgrounds, women, children, the underprivileged, people with disabilities, chronic disease, can play. And we want to have active systems where we have investing in systems to create infrastructure for sports and physical activity, right? So in India, looking at this from a top-down approach, I actually think we are lacking policy in the three areas, right? While implementation is also lacking. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, a holistic view on how this can be improved.
I stand by my position.
The policy skeptic.
It's not about policy. The schools exist, the space exists. PE teacher doesn't show up, equipment disappears. We just need to implement this better. If we implemented, you covered 80% of the problem. The last 20%, by all means, we need more policy. But I think the first problem we can solve by just implementing what is already in policy, in my view.
All right.
I'll just add a bit. I'm not sure if it can solve for it, but I think one of the things which we are doing it at our foundation is to make these conversations more mainstream, and that comes when you get more these top-down people to come and speak about it, right? So business leaders, sporting leaders, people from any other industry could speak about these alternative frameworks where how we could, create a system where health and movement can be a priority, right? So these conversations need to be not just seasonal, but it has to be a constant drive. So, for example, if Neeraj Chopra won, the medal, suddenly the entire focus is on javelin. I'm not sure how many people in the country were attracted to that sport before that event happened, right? But now there is an over focus to that event. So we need to have these conversations. I mean, implement. I would definitely second that, but we have to constantly have these conversations in the mainstream and not just with an intent, but generally to have the data points which Go Sport is trying to put together and make it more evident that this would happen if we don't continue to. And that's what most of the developing countries have done. That right. If you go to Europe and US, they have this very strong ecosystem because it was not a seasonal one-off incident. It's always a priority to them.
Yeah, and we strongly believe in research as well. Like if you look in Australia, there's actually a study down to how many people are doing yoga, how many people are playing cricket, how many people are going bushwalking. There's literally an open data set that you can go to. And it's a much smaller country, obviously, easier to research. But it is down to that granular data. And once you have the data, the amount of stuff you can do, tracking it over time, looking at programs, seeing responses, I do think there is an opportunity. Yes, the scale of the problem is large, but I think this has to be looked at equally with a policy lens. And Samuel and I have had many, many debates. I don't think either of us is going to win, but we're both going to motor on. So
Thank you.
I think we have maybe time for a couple more. I think folks are also eager for dinner, I'm sure. But can you go ahead? And I think there's a couple more hands back there.
Hi, thank you. My name is Deepika, and I work with an organization called Step Foundation. And for the last 18 months, a small team of us at Step have been focusing on our youngest, the 0 to 8-year-olds. And I can't agree with Somil more in terms of what he articulated. All our learnings and research for the last 18 months has been talking to mothers, talking to fathers across the country, to develop a point of view in terms of how India looks at its youngest children. And I only want to reserve my comments to the idea of play and how in our relationship with our youngest, the role of play, where does it sit? And deep down, forget policy, forget everything. I think it really, really boils down to culture and mindset. The permissions we give ourselves. And this is the reason why our efforts actually started to focus on, do we need to create a narrative for the early years, which is about growth for the adult by engaging with your child. And that's why we launched a mission called Bachpan Manao Badhte Jao. The intent of the mission is to really create a societal conversation around the idea of the early years and play being the way that children learn and grow. And the relationship between a caring adult and the child. And this is not a caring adult being only parent, right? Anganwadi worker needs to play with the kids in her Anganwadi. She just doesn't know how to. Giving her more materials, it doesn't mean she knows what to do with it. This is the type of societal conversation we need to have. And in many ways, thank you for today, because I think it really opens up a lot of that possibility. But what I want to put on the table is the abundance that we can work with. Every year, 25 million children are born in India. Every year, there is an opportunity to make a new start for a conversation at that stage when there is a new parent, new mother, new something. We've done it well with vaccination, inoculation, nutrition, health. Maybe there is a starting point there as well that we can bring some attention to with every new generation of parent that comes into the ecosystem. So with that, I would say it would be great to have more conversations on Bachpan Mana with all of you. And we don't see this at Step as an Step mission and see it more like a societal conversation. And we've had about 80 organizations starting these conversations with us, more the merrier and better. And mostly to focus on the idea of abundance in the early years, rather than the burden of it and the things that you have to set right. That's very scary for all the adults around, and there's rejection of ideas that happens at that point. So yeah.
Thank you, Deepika. And we'll go from 8 step to 10,000 steps at some point.
Hi, I'm Sudeep. I have a slightly different opinion from everyone on stage. I think it's not the policy. I think it's not the implementation. I think where we are lacking is more to do with the inherent motivation, right? Let's think of this. We all were stopped, or at least most of us, were stopped during our 10th standards from sport, right? Where did that motivation come from? Nobody introduced a policy for it, or nobody said that you have to study. It was not an implementation. It was a motivation because our economic strata got us to a point where this became the most important element. So if a corporate is not bringing this importance of sport, or if schools don't value sport themselves because there are no competitions in a way which brings the school's name up, then how are we going to make this happen? So is there a thought around this? That's my question to you all.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the inherent motivations is to live a healthier life, extend your life, and live a better life. And perhaps it isn't as immediate as getting better marks and getting a job. And I think the gap between when you face the consequences and when you're taking your actions is perhaps the greatest challenge here, because it's in some sense delayed, or the opposite of delayed gratification, delayed consequences. And with the academic pursuit, there's an immediacy and the desperation to get it right. But the desperation hits you much later in your life. So perhaps it's a education issue, less a motivation issue. And I think if we all understood what the consequences were, that motivation would be quite intrinsic, would be my view. I don't know, Shweta.
I mean, I see where it's coming from, and there is some merit to it. But the implementation assumes you address motivation. I mean, that's the way I saw it.
Yes.
But I think there's another piece which we need to think about on the motivation, which is just simple fun. I think if you are able to find with policy or with implementation just fun into this experience of play, you will have more people coming out. And I think when we think about fun as a problem to solve, and how do I solve fun, whether it's inclusion, whether it's safe space, whether it's teaching skills, whether it's whatever else, right? I think maybe we should also think about fun and not just the adult-driven statistics of so much of economic growth and all that. If we add the fun element, if more kids are out, all this will happen.
But I think one of the issues there is fun is seen as frivolous. And also, and in some sense, can be deprioritized when more important things are there.
That's
right?
exactly a point. Can we, and if this is the adult group that's discussing it, talk about serious fun? That fun is not only when you are a child or when you are drunk. Fun is actually engaging, being fully involved, connecting with people. You run a marathon, you're having fun. You're not laughing all the time. But it's fun. You want to do it again. Right? So I think maybe we should relook at fun and not as not to give it a frivolous view.
Yeah. Right. It seems like it's only for the top 1% that fun is important more than inherent motivation, isn't it?
No, but with regards to motivation, I think it's what the society values, right? Society values a high-paying job. It doesn't really value a healthy individual. And that's why I think in the 10th grade, like myself, I decided to stop playing and pursue academics because I wanted to be successful in the eyes of society. Didn't realize that successful also means living a healthy, happy life.
No, so I won't argue with him because he's one of the founders we supported. So, no, but that said, I mean, there are different point of views, but I think there's no one clear answer to everything. Everyone comes from a different tangent and dimension. So there could be policy, there could be motivation, but it's just not one piece fixed for everything. I mean, like Mr. Isaac said, that we are a 1.4 billion population, and everyone has different.
And there's not going to be any uniform solutions to
so
any
we
of
have
this.
almost 500 million problems, and the way to look at it. So.
And I think what we have found is the concept of just physical activity is the unifying factor, because it's so fundamental to the human being, right? So the concept of being human is about being moving, active, and everything else can be overlaid on it. Whether it's motivation, fun, sport, yoga, dance, all of these, but the fundamental unit is physical activity. And if you get your body moving and getting enough physical activity, you'll find your ways, right, in some sense. So in some sense, all of these are expressions of the fundamental unit. And I think this evening's really been about recognition that all of us have a chance to participate in this, whether it's personally, taking that extra step and getting more active, whether it's professionally, so inserting physical activity of whatever sort and form into our workplaces, into our schools, into our environments, even at home, but also publicly. So can we be advocates in some sense for more active cities, more active workplaces? Because in many ways, I think it's something Somil brought up, is what you ask for is what you get. And of your cities, of your urban settings, of your environments, are you making those demands? And if you're not going to get them. So we are all sort of private people, but in personal, but also public places. And can we take this attitude and the interest and desire to be more physically active to all of our environments? And that, just like to end on that note, thank you all panelists for being here.